computer. Those of you who want to record this, you are allowed to record it. Okay, so magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Kayo po ay nandito ngayon sa isang webinar patungkol sa food security sa Pilipinas. Ang ating topic ay an impending food crisis, vanishing farmlands, vanishing farmers. At ang ating pong tagapagsalita ay si Professor Teodoro C.Mendoza. Siya po ay full professor. Ano yung number niyan, Ted? 30 ba? Importante po yan sa mga nasa...
Professor 12.
Professor 12. Importante po yan sa mga nasa academe. But siya po ay retired na ngayon at mukhang siya ay nagiging full-time patriot. In his field, he has written a lot of peer-reviewed journal articles, very active. And I know him because we come from the same hometown, Tarlac. And he said he wanted to do this particular webinar in advance of a larger webinar on March 28, which is going to be sponsored by the Vinson's Policy Center. That announcement will be given out, but this topic is so current now that several webinars on this we expect to be happening soon. So natutuwa tayo na tayo siguro ay unang salvo, although alam natin na si Senator Kiko Pangilinan has been doing a lot of these talks on the situation of our farmers. But this is, I think, going to tell us about the Ukraine link. So si Dr. Mendoza will be able to provide this link. We have this webinar only for 1 hour because some of the students will be leaving at 12:10. So we better start. So inimbitahan ko po si Professor Dr. Teodoro Mendoza na umpisan na po niya yung kanyang presentation.
Quickly, meron hong hindi nabanggit si Sir Doy. Si Dr. Romero ay previous teacher namin sa economics when I was taking up in the high school during our 4th year. So ibig lang sabihin, mas senior siya sa akin. Ano po? And that's why up to now I'm calling him sir, because he was our former teacher in the high school. Yes, itong topic na ito ay malapit sa akin kasi 11 years ago meron na akong na-publish na paper sa Daily Inquirer heading off a food crisis. And as a result of this, nabasa ito ni Secretary taga Quezon yun eh. And I became a member of Board of Trustees of PhilRice then. So malapit po sa so ito po ang discussion sequence. I just want to give a brief remarks on the main topic and then I'll provide you the data. And of course, I'll discuss a bit the war in Ukraine and the impending world food crisis. And then for what the next government should do, of course, my summary of recommendations and actions. I would like to talk quickly kasi mabilis lang pa. Nag-practice ako kanina. It took me about an hour or less, 45 minutes. So ito po ang aking gagawin. I'll give a brief remarks on impending food crisis, vanishing farmlands, vanishing farmers. Hindi naman mawawala ang mga bukid natin. Liliit lang kasi nga dalawang factor nun dahil nga sa dumadami ang tao, yung per capita ang pinag-uusapan dito. But of course, there is also this what we call land use conversion. So tatalakayin ko rin po yun. Mga magsasaka, wag po kayong mag-alala. We are better off, I'm sorry to say this, if we have only, let's say 1 million farmers or less. Kasi napakaliit po ng farm sizes natin. kaya hindi makapag-introduce ng modern technologies, machineries, etc. Kasi nga wala sa economic size farm ang mga bukid natin. And there are two ways of looking at it, whether head halt or tail yung coins and so forth. Kasi ang problema, if we are to introduce yung modern farming, si dating Director General ng field ng IRI, ang sabi niya, you need 30 hectares. Saan naman pupunta ngayon yung mga we have 2.5 million farmers, saan pupunta yung 2.3 million farmers na magsasaka? So yun po ang irony dito, no? Yun po ang bakit mahirap kumain na ngayon, lalo na dito sa Ukraine crisis. By the way, kanina binuksan ko ang aking cellphone. Ang sabi dito, global crop collapse now is certainty. Widespread famine is irreversible. A convergence of horrifying events have set into motion an irreversible collapse of food production and crop harvest that will lead to global famine all the way through 2024. These events cannot be stopped for the simple reason that plants take time to grow. Fertilizer prices have tripled and will likely go higher, especially rice. Russia has halted fertilizer exports and shut down natural gas pipeline, which is used to manufacture fertilizer. And as a result, the fertilizer supply is growing scarce. About 5 billion people on planet depend on fossil fuel created fertilizer for their source of primary food. And food shelves are going to look downright frightening in 2022. And for the shelves actually have food, it's going to cost perhaps twice as much. Some items might see prices triple. So ito po ang kanilang forecast regarding this Ukraine crisis at saka kaya nga yung isa kong paper ang ina-advocate ko doon, it's time to grow our own food. I will place it in the chat and email it to you later, no? So as I've said 11 years ago, nandun na itong aking paper na ito. I discussed 7 factors that may lead to this food crisis and what can be done. So I didn't realize na meron na naman discussion na ganito ngayon. But ano ang difference? Ang difference, meron tayong gera nga sa Ukraine. Causal factors, ito po I tallied and enumerated above yung mga factors. Yung ang letter po ay white, ito ay compilation ni Dr. Kunuma, that is yung Director General ng Asia Pacific of FAO. Konti lang ang nailagay niya, yung konti lang daw ang arable land natin per capita, which is about 1.4 billion hectare. Ang water natin, 70% of all water is used in crop production, in agriculture, pero kumukunti na rin. There is slackening investment, stagnation of productivity, so on and so forth. Pituho lahat ang nabanggit niya, but incidentally, I added also 7. The Ukraine war, the agri-crops for biofuel. Ang hindi niya nabanggit is that our food system is so oil-based in terms of inputs, in terms of logistics, so on and so forth. And then ito nga ang relationship ng Ukraine war, it is related to energy. Yun na nga, we need energy to manufacture fertilizer. And of course, at that time, wala namang COVID-19 pandemic. And then, of course, I do not know bakit hindi niya in-include ang globalization, liberalization, and import of heavily subsidized food. Ito po ngayon ang isang realization natin, the financialization of food. Ito po ang mga mayayaman na bansa like China. Lester Brown mentioned who will feed China. At that time, 1.2 billion pa lang sila. Now they are 1.4 billion. That's why China is all over the world now, leasing on a long-term basis many lands in the world. In the Philippines, they've leased already 1.2 million hectares. Ang target nila about 3 million hectares. I don't know kung natuloy na yung iba pa. Pero before this, merong data na na-release na meron na silang 1.2 hectare. And then, because of technology-based na ang farming natin, precision agriculture, smart farming, pumapasok na ho ang mga corporate farms. May corporate control na ngayon sa atin, paano ang distribution, so on and so forth, kontrolado nila yung supply. So ultimately, kung mataas ang demand, they control also the prices, and food prices will increase. The number one, the biggest landowner now in the United States is Bill Gates. Una, napakayaman kasi niya. So let's scan the data. Ito po ang medyo technical na issue, no? Ang global resource use natin, we need 1.75 hectares per cap of biologically productive land and sea space. That is when our population was 7.2 billion. But our ecological footprint, meaning the productive space and seascape na kailangan to absorb the waste, emission from this, we need 2.7 hectares. So if you subtract that, we have a deficit of 0.95 hectare per capita, or we have 35% ecological resource deficit. When our population will increase to 9.3 billion by 2050, our biologically productive space will decrease to 1 hectare per capita. And therefore, we are consuming more than 80%. That translates to almost 3 times we are using 86% more than what is available. So that is the summation in terms of ecological resource use. But of course, we have ecological footprint divide. Developed countries like the United States have ecological footprint of 10.3 hectares per capita, whereas Bangladesh is only 0.5, India 0.8. Whereas the Philippines, perhaps between India and Bangladesh, so that relative to US has more time, 10 times more than ecological footprint than the Indians, 20 times for the Bangladesh, or perhaps about 15 times for the Philippines. Now, take a look at this soil. Despite the technology of hydroponics, aeroponics, and so forth, still soil will be the medium for food production. But take a look, soils are being destroyed 13 times faster than can be created. About 327 million hectares are already degraded, or about half of the total cultivated land of 1.4 billion hectares are desertified. It costs more to grow crops in this degraded soil. On water, agriculture uses 69% of fresh water, but fresh water consumption is almost 2 times that of its replenishment. About 400 million hectares of Earth's surface are salt affected, of which 60 million hectares are in the South and Southeast Asia, 27 million. And then in the Philippines, 400,000 hectares are saline affected areas. What is saline? Of course, we have these mangrove species that thrive on seawater. But you see, our food crops like rice, corn cannot thrive on saline water, because saline is just like drought for them. These 125,000 hectares I added or cultivated with poor results. So as we discuss climate change, we will discuss further. On world irrigated lands, since 1990s up to 1998, you'll see the percent irrigated area, the amount of irrigated areas remains practically the same. And there is a little bit increase in terms of irrigation this year, or over the last 5 years, to something like 280 million hectares, or 20% of the land area. Ano po ang ibig sabihin nito? Hindi na tayo makakapag-irrigate halos ng mga area kasi saan kukunin yung tubig? Okay? And well, there's a good discussion in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we have 5% of the total area that are irrigated. Okay? But half of these irrigated areas were irrigated during the last 20 years. And we need to put aggressive irrigation infrastructure development to grow more rice. Some 200,000 are being targeted annually till all the 3.2 million potentially irrigable lands are irrigated. But you see, the Philippines is a mountainous country, Therefore, we need the forest. Water is equal to forest. But you see, we have this ideal forest cover of 54%. That was in 1969. We still have 12 million hectare forest, but we have rapid deforestation. And right now we have only, in 2010, which is about 10 years ago, we have only 1.8 million hectare forest. But you see, the DNER is claiming 7.16 million hectares. This include the fruit trees and the agroforest areas that they have been. But these fruit tree-based farms and agroforest farms is not a substitute for pristine forest because they only have 1/5 of the biomass. The dissertation of one of my students reveals that in Zamboanga City, they don't have any much water because they have no more forests. They implemented agroforestry. Agroforestry generate only 1/5 to 1/6 of the biomass of pristine forest. So agroforest, fruit tree-based farm are net user of water. Ayun. Oh, what happened? It doesn't want to move. Sorry, why my why does not want to move? Well, you know what happened to our watershed? They're severely deforested, eroded, very low water infiltration, poor water retention. So there is also vanishing water for irrigation. Not only vanishing farmlands, but vanishing water for irrigation. During El Nino year, our irrigation coverage decreased by 50%. This is based on the study of Dr. David and his students. So this is the reason for the baldness of our forests. To reforest 1 hectare, at that time we estimated it's about 100,000 pesos per hectare, but we need to reforest 10 million hectares. That will cost 1 trillion pesos. If we are to do this in 10-year period at 1 million hectare per year, then we are to spend about 100 billion per year. So then the question is, do we have this much money to spend for reforestation? Deforestation is equal to soil erosion. 5.2 million hectares of agricultural lands are are severely eroded, and 2.4 million hectares are in Mindanao. So I don't know if you can still call Mindanao now as the land of promise. In addition to that, we have coastal and marine resource degradation. Right now, we have only 1/10 remaining of our mangroves areas. Now we talk about resource use. When we are saying resource use, then we talk about population. I made this projection at different three population growth rates: 2.04, 1.9, and 1.7. By now, we are about 110 million. But of course, the Population Commission is saying that our growth rate is now decreasing. Okay, so if our population growth rate will not be reduced to 1.0 or even lesser, Thailand now has a population growth rate of only 0.5%. We are still 1.7%. So we need to have a lot of catching up. Okay, I don't know how to feed 185 million Filipinos. So we look at our land area and our population in terms of resource use. I was sensitized when I read this paper of the CIA that the ideal farmland per person in the Philippines is 0.441 hectare. I spent 2 to 3 months recalculating it, and my calculation is 0.43 hectare per person. So that our ideal carrying capacity is about 27 million people. We are now 111 million. Therefore, we have exceeded our ideal carrying capacity 4 times. We have to humble ourselves that we have 50% error and therefore our ideal population is about 54 million. That is our population in 1985. Okay, so if we bring back time, if we are only 54 million Filipinos right now, we don't have any food problem. So you know the implication of population. So to be specific, in 1970s, we have 730 square meter per person. 1990s, 443 square meter. Why I made it red to indicate that this is already the optimum or the ceiling where we can be at 4 tons average yield per hectare. We are about self-sufficient in rice. As the population grow, and now we have only 220 square meter per person due to land conversion and population increase. Okay, we have to do cropping 2 times, but 55% of the area are only irrigated. So how do we produce? Okay. In terms of farm size, we have also decreasing farm size per farmer. In 1970, it's about 2.71 hectare per farmer. By 2010, it's 0.85. Now we are 2022, perhaps about half a hectare already. What is happening? The agrarian reform beneficiaries' parents died already, so the lands are divided to their heirs. Okay. We are claiming that rice farmers are poor because of low price of rice, small farm size, low yield, low adoption of yield increasing technologies because they are poor. What about the price of rice? I did this on my own also. The CPI corrected price of rice base year is 1972 is already 108 pesos per kilogram. And now our retail price is only 34 to 50 pesos a kilo. So our price of rice is only 30 to 40% of the CPI corrected price. But we use the new procedure, true cost accounting procedure, the price of rice should already increase to 315 pesos per kilogram. The price of rice in Japan and South Korea is about 450 to 500 pesos per kilogram. But I do not know if we will reach that stage that our farmers will receiving that price. Over the world, food prices decreased by 50% in real terms. This is the figure. While production increased, but at the lower half, you would see that food price decreased. So Watson is referring to this. No, that there is a 50% decline in real terms of the food prices. In addition to population, we have to look at what we call the population divide between urban and rural areas. We have increasing people with time, but this time to year 2017, we are about 60% of our people are already living in urban areas. Urbanization means land use conversion for infrastructures, roads, building, residential, recreational areas, and therefore we have vanishing farmlands. And there are fewer people who are involved in food production. How do we make food available in urban areas? It presents tremendous logistic requirements. Why? Because foods are supposed to be packaged, stored, transported, and put into retail house. But now there will be higher transport costs due to increase in oil prices. Railways are obviously cost-effective for long-distance transport. We computed this. Railways traveling through the railway will consume only 1/12 energy relative to our small trucks and jeepneys. Incidentally, what are in place, what were funded by ADB, World Bank, IMF are our highways, SLEX and XLEX, and the reason is obvious for them to be able to sell their cars and those trucks and buses. More urban people, more water needs. That's why we have a threat of water shortage now in Metro Manila. How do you provide sufficient water to about 40 million people? Okay. On top of this, we have this climate change. another. So if this global warming will proceed and the temperature will increase to 2 degrees centigrade, FAO said there will be 25% decrease in yield by in the next 50 years, when we need to increase food or yield by 50% by 2050. Okay, so how would that be? And if there will be business as usual and we will not reduce our greenhouse gas emission, there will be 8 degrees centigrade increase in temperature. Mag-joke lang ho ng konti, kinopya ko itong PowerPoint na ito. If science is still uncertain, this is now the positive proof of global warming. So 18th century daw, ganito ang sinusuot ng kababaihan. So pagdating daw ho ngayon ito na lang ang liit ng kanilang sinusuot. Tawa naman po dyan. So global warming is associated with sea level rise, including to soil subsidence because of all this development and water pumping, okay, for water. 1 meter sea level rise will submerge 15 of the country's region. And what about the 7 meter sea level rise, if Al Gore will be correct? Okay. So the Philippines contributes only 0.3%. Of course, US is the top contributor, as we contribute only on the average 0.9 to 1.2 tons per hectare. Is that right? We have the most traveled president in the Philippines. This is GMA. At that time, we had of her presidency, she had 73 trips. Her carbon emission, we computed, is about 24.625 tons. It's 24 times more than the average Filipino average. So when we claim that the USA people are the ones who are emitting most, we have more Filipinos also. We have some Filipinos who are emitting more. I'm showing this to show that there are 2 countries, China and USA, that contribute 42% of the world total for emission. So if you want to cut down emission, then USA should lead. China, as you know, back out. They did not join the last discussion on climate change. But this is perhaps unknown to many, that the food systems is the major driver of greenhouse gas emission. 44 to 57% of all greenhouses. And the major source are the agricultural activities or inputs, including, or the most would be food processing, packaging, and transportation. You add that to, that's 35% of the 57%. The reason, from land preparation, taking care of crops, spraying pesticides, processing them, and then hauling, etc., use a lot of energy. That's why 35% would be their share. So climate change and the impending food crisis, it's Lester Brown who said, if drought or heat wave that hit Russia will happen in the Midwest, USA, the world #1 cereal producers, the world will have severe food shortage. So he said, we are one crisis away. On the other hand, he did not perceive also Ukraine crisis. Why Putin wants to invade Ukraine, aside from the political, the geopolitics. I summarized these points. That Ukraine is an important agricultural country. It's first in Europe in terms of arable land, 3rd place in the world by the area of black soil, fertile soil, okay? 1st place in the world in the export of sunflower and sunflower oil and so forth. So in addition to the mineral resources, Ukraine is a food basket. Why we have a declining contribution of agriculture to our GDP, and one of the major reasons is climate change, particularly El Nino, okay, where we have negative 0.64, negative 6.45, the worst El Nino that we have in 1997, 1998, okay. And globally, according to Watson, there is fisheries collapse. There is also declining capture fisheries. Why 25% of commercially exploited marine fish stocks are over-harvested? Why they are over-harvesting? Because of big demand, because of huge population who wants to eat fish. Now, I get back to the causal factors impending food crisis and explain the oil-based food system, okay, in relation to agriculture food system. Our food security index way back in 1990 is 103, 83 in 2010, 95 in 2016. By 2022, we are only 70% food secure. And it's shared to GDP as food security index decrease. That share of agriculture to GDP is also decreasing. 18% in 2008, 16.8% in 2010, only 9.2% by 2019. Why this decreasing share of agriculture? Well, of course, the growth of industry and service sector was larger, the Asian financial crisis, influx of local market of agricultural products due to free trading, liberalization, globalization, so on and so forth. There's insufficient investment in rural infrastructure, and then farmers have low morale to produce more. They have negative outlook in farming. There's an article published in Daily Inquirer, farmers may be a dying breed. That's why my senior teacher here is saying farmers are vanishing, farmers. So what are the impacts of agriculture having low share to GDP? There is lower rural employment that leads to rural population out-migration, and then we have urban congestion and decreasing rural labor due to aging population and migration. What is the numerics of Philippine agriculture decline? Agriculture is excessively underfunded and under Philippine condition. The Thais and Malaysians have 3 to 5 higher budget per capita in agriculture for the last 30 years. Now, that could have been remedied when we have this law, Agriculture, Fisheries, and Modernization Act. Why? Because if the funds are given, then we have developed our agriculture system, but the ungiven or those funds that were not given is about 210 billion now at 3% inflation correction. But if the other sources of fund for agriculture were also given, the sum would surge to about 500 billion. And what about agriculture budget? The average share of rice is 65% of the total budget for agriculture. And we are claiming agriculture is not equal to rice. How will the other sector of agriculture develop if funding is minimal? Philippines become a major importer of agricultural products. Between 1994 to 2000, the Philippines imported 61.5% more agricultural imports to the tune of 4.28 billion pesos, export, which is 2.655 billion, or a difference of 1.6 billion pesos, or a ratio of about 2:1. 2019, Philippines, a super importer of agricultural products and inputs. We are importing 676.5 billion or 13.53 billion, 4 times higher in the last few years. Export only 334 billion. So the import-export ratio is 2:1. Philippines became the highest rice importer in 2008. We imported 2.4 million metric tons valued at 1.9 billion pesos or 95 billion pesos as estimated by NEDA. Why the Philippines became the biggest rice importing country? It's because of wrong calculations. They made use of the supply utilization approach, the methods in calculating the rice requirement. But of course, year 29 is already an election. So, you know, perhaps why we have to import a lot during that time. The Ukraine war with Russia. Okay, just this morning, yesterday, last night when I was editing my paper, this is only $130 per barrel. But this morning, when I opened my internet, it's already 139. The forecast is that price of oil will increase up to $150 per barrel. So the price of diesel oil now here ranges from 60 to 65 at $130 per barrel. With additional $9, it might increase again from 70 to 75. So another 5 pesos increase in the price of oil is in the open. Yeah. So incidentally, the Department of Agriculture don't want to accept that the increase in the price of food and vegetables and fruits is already due to the Ukraine war. Why? Precisely because they don't know how to compute. Because the trucks that are used for hauling products use or travel only at 4 kilometers per liter. They travel at least 200 kilometers, and therefore they are already spending 3,200 pesos per hauling, okay? Excluding the toll fees, the expensive toll fees in our NLEX. That is the price when the oil price is only $130. So as we increase the price of oil, then the traveling cost will also increase. But for these crops that will be established, it will increase already the cost of land preparation. Land preparation is using 40 liters per hectare. So that is already 2,730,000 pesos per hectare. Increase the fertilizer price. I used here only last night the 3,000 pesos per bag. But with this increase in fertilizer, this will increase to 3,000 pesos, 3,500 pesos per bag. So at 8 bags, this is already 24,000. Major response of the farmers will not apply this much of fertilizer. They will do cost cutting. Why? Because they're not sure that there will be also a corresponding increase in their sale price of rice. And therefore, what's the consequence? There will be decreased yield. There will be decreased supply and high demand, and therefore increased prices of foodstuff. That's why we expect, according to that news I read a while ago, that the food price may increase from 2 to 3 times. I tried to follow this, the relative price of urea, the main fertilizer, which is nitrogen, and the palay price. In 1970, the price ratio of nitrogen urea to palay is only 3.48. Okay, but by 2010, it's 5.16. Why it decreased a bit in 2021? Because of the pandemic, there is decreased need for food. By 2022, without the Ukraine war, it's already 7.4. Now with the prolonged Ukraine war, it may increase to 10 or 11. Okay, so will the price of rice increase to a minimum of 30 pesos per kilogram? Meaning well-milled rice will be 60 pesos per kilogram. So it will nearly double the price. Okay, what do you want? Increase the price of rice, or our farmers will do a lot of cost cutting and we will have a tremendous shortage of rice? Then where shall we import rice? Okay, the same practice will be done by the Thailands, by the Malaysians, by the Vietnamese, by the Cambodians. So their rice yield will also decrease. Substitute for rice is wheat, our pandesal. Okay, but as mentioned here, the farmers in US will also cut down on the fertilizer, and they will also reduce their yield. So that is the repercussion of a prolonged Ukraine war. Our food production is use a lot of energy, 30 calories per calorie of food in the industrial world to produce the so-called food surplus. If their farmers will cut down on inputs, yield, and food for export shall vanish. And definitely food prices shall increase. What's our option? go organic agriculture, and we have these lots of benefits of organic farming, decrease oil usage, decrease cost of production. Our food will be safe, nutritious, and food becomes our medicine. Organic farming reduce greenhouse gas emission from 50 to 75%. But what's the reality? Less than 2% of our farmers are into organic farming. If all farmers will adopt organic farming, yield will decline by about 50%. So we will go hungry. Meaning to say, organic farming is the solution, but it is also the problem. And I have another paper, we have a published paper also, organic agriculture in transition. Okay. The challenge, we need to be food resilient. We make available food on the table for Filipinos. What shall we do? We should have adapted, adjusted consumption pattern. Rice as a barometer of food security is insecurity. We should be lucky. We are in a tropical environment. We can grow crops the whole year round. So we need to eat diverse food caloric sources, corn, root crops, which are drought tolerant, banana, not only those are rice intake. These caloric extenders have complex carbohydrate, high in fiber. They're good for human health. We have so much benefits in eating corn. Another, we have to eat brown rice instead of well-milled rice. Brown rice gives higher milling recovery, 8 to 10% more rice. And it will decrease our rice intake by 20 to 40%. We will be rice surplus because we are producing 12 million metric tons, and we will only be consuming 10 million metric tons if all of us will eat brown rice. And on top of that, we have many brown rice has many health benefits. Filipinos should eat more vegetables and fruits and less meat. Before we eat, we should already be eating fruits and vegetables. Filipinos consume only 30 kilograms, while the optimum is 140, 180 kilograms. The Chinese consume up to 210 kilograms per year, while the Japanese eat about 120 kilograms. Kaya po hindi sila masyadong tumataba. Filipinos are fast becoming meat eaters. Our meat consumption is increasing by 3.5% per year. We started 9 kilograms per capita. Now we are about 30 kilograms per capita. Eat less meat. There is very low feed conversion from plant to animal protein. We feed 6 kilogram plant protein to produce 1 kilogram animal protein. And therefore, they are also consuming a lot of water because to produce 1 kilogram grain, it consumes 3,000 to 4,000 liters of water. So you just multiply that with the 4 kilograms or 3 kilograms mixed feed to produce a kilogram of protein. So we are Filipinos. Our diet is mainly rice, fish, and veggies. We should eat more fish because we have a lot of coastal, marine, and freshwater areas, 220 million hectares, 1 million hectares of freshwater, and many reasons the quality proteins from fish. But of course, the West Philippine Sea, we have problems there. That's why we are importing now galunggong. Our fisher folks cannot do fishing there. What's the next administration to do for agriculture? I hope Senator Pangilinan is listening already. So the concept of agro-food value chain on the short, medium term, from production to post-production, we have identified the needs of farmers. We are an archipelagic country. How do we produce this? So we have to look at the agro-ecosystem of the major islands, Luzon, Visayas, in Mindanao. We have low R&D in the country. Okay, so we have to establish or identify 10 key universities with distinctive excellence. And my suggestion is that Congress allocate 1 billion each for this university so that professor and staff will not spend a lot of time begging money to DA, BAR, DOST, who are playing like gods in terms of distributing R&D funds. Who are these people? Why they are entrusted that money for R&D? Why not entrust R&D to to these big universities. Thailand did that 2 decades ago. And where is Thailand now? Okay. So I think this is one that we should campaign with the next administration. Don't put R&D funds to DA bar, DOST, so on and so forth, because they have no track record. It's still the university that generates a lot of research. It's still the university where we have the staff, the technical staff, the professor. Agriculture is not a standalone industry. That low gross expenses on R&D over GDP, so that we have Agriculture and Fishery Mechanization Act RA 1061, but they did not provide funds for it. That's why we don't have the machinery, the equipment, the logistics support for farmers and fisher folk. So what needs to be done? We implement the laws to develop and improve the lives of fisher folks. 1992, we have RA 7607, the Magna Carta for Small Farmers, Section 8, Guaranteed Support Price, Section 10 and 11 for infrastructure for production to post-production, Section 23, no importation of product produced locally. We just depended so much on food imports. RA 84354, Agriculture, Fishery and Modernization Act. I have read a lot of laws, but I think this is one of the best laws crafted in the Philippines. This was crafted during the time of late Senate President Angara. It's 20 billion in the first year, 17 billion per year for the next 6 years. So this is my computation. If it will be given now, it should already be 210 billion. In 2002, we have RA 9178, the establishment of Barangay Micro Business Enterprise that provides benefits and incentives to our barangay people. It was not implemented. 2013, we have RA 1061, Agriculture and Fishery Modernization Act, that should locally manufacture engines, machineries, equipment for agricultural fisheries from production, processing, and marketing. But it was a law. It was not given any funds. Okay. We have started already fabricating 12 horsepower diesel engine. It was not finished because the OST did not release the funds. 2019, we have RA 11321. Before the pandemic, we have this Sagip-Saka Act, instituting Farmers and Fisher Port Enterprise Development Program to improve production, provision inputs, equipment, infrastructure, so on and so forth. It is yet to be implemented. But what is notable of all these laws implemented for agriculture is RA 11203, the Rice Tarification Act. You know what happened to our rice farmers? They become beggars. Rice from 19 pesos per kilogram, it's zoomed down to about 11 to 12 pesos per kilo. We have a law passed in 2000, RA 880, the Safeguard Measures Act, but it was not invoked. Okay, I don't know why no one sued the department secretary for not doing his job. So here are the summary of specific recommendation and actions. Of course, we have to stop land hemorrhage, the land use conversion. The RTL made many farmers disappointed, discouraged in rice farming. That's why many of our irrigated rice lands are already sold. And you know, the best buyer, you know, the one who bought a lot of farmlands already, rice farmlands all over the country. We are into free trade, but no country implement free trade anymore. They're back to protectionism because of pandemic, climate crisis, increase in the price of oil. Our goal should be to reduce export to only import to only 30%. We have to adopt India productivity protectionist policies. We have to regenerate soil fertility because, as I've said, we have lost 50% of their natural fertility. We have to promote and fund diversified integrated organic farming. We have to reforest critical watershed to support irrigation. We have to restore, bring back the mangrove forest, to prevent storm surge, to have sanctuary and breeding grounds, areas for diverse fish species. Then we have to implement system value chain approaches to agriculture enterprise. And finally, implement the laws crafted to develop, improve the lives of our fisher folks. And I've discussed them briefly a while ago. And we have to amend Republic Act 11-2003 which is our main law that is now threatening us, that has increased, that has made again the Philippines the #1 rice importer. And finally, I hope the Senate will not concur with the RCEP. That's it. We have to treasure our gift. We have the land still, the water, the capital, and lots of sunshine. For energy, many of our farmers have the carbaos, and we have many large coastal and marine areas. So I don't see any reason why we will not have food on the table. It's just a matter of harnessing our resources. So yun po ang aking final statement. Salamat po sa inyong pakikinig.
Okay, maraming salamat Dr. Ted Mendoza. Talagang napaka-panoramic ng iyong presentation and it really ends with what needs to be done. Tama-tama po sa ating mga kandidatong tumatakbo ngayon. Kailangan po nilang marinig ang iyong mga ideas. Ngayon, the floor is now open for questions. Ano po yung matanong nyo? Si Fernando.
Ay po, sir.
Yes.
Salamat po sa sa presentation niyo po. Ang dami kong nakuha po doon. Siguro po yung question ko is yung na-mention yung protectionism, sir. So do you feel like ito nga po in the future, more countries, especially the Philippines po, would lean more towards protectionism and maybe even reviving yung agricultural sector natin to be less reliant on on import. So do you see it going there, sir?
Ang problema kasi ng mga influential policy maker natin ay they are so neoliberal. Ang problema kasi hindi sila naka-touch base sa reality. Kaya gusto nila i-liberalize na lahat. Okay? Nagsimula sa rice, ayaw nilang tanggapin na failure ang rice trade liberalization. Hindi yung dapat rice tarification, it should be rice trade liberalization. So kung hindi natin po protektahan ang ating mga magsasaka, ganun ang mangyayari sa kanila. Okay? Tingnan mo ang US. 16 billion bago matapos ang term ni Trump ang binigay sa mga magsasaka kasi natalo sila sa China. Maraming ini-export sa kanila ang China. So to So this time sabi nila no more aid or whatever sa China. Ang India hindi siya pumasok ngayon dun sa RCEP, yung Rice Comprehensive Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Arrangement. Kasi ang tingin nila mamamatay ang kanilang dairy industry dahil sa mas malaki, mas efficient ang Australia at saka ang New Zealand. Yung mga ganon. Tayo sa Pilipinas, saan tayo mas efficient? Ang pinag-uusapan lang naman dito, ano ba ang kahandaan na pinaggawa natin? Yun na nga, yung Magna Carta for Small Farmers. Hindi naman na-implement. Ang sinabi ko na kanina, the best model law na nabasa ko na, of course, perhaps, marami kasi akong compilation na laws. Ang pinakamagandang batas na nabasa ko itong APMA, Agriculture and Fishery Modernization Act. Pero hindi naman na-implement, hindi na nabigyan ng pondo. The Vanishing Farmlands na sinasabi ni Doc Doy, doon sa APMA, kung babasahin ninyo, nandun ang establishment ng SAPDC, Zone of Agriculture and Fishery Production Zone. Okay? Hindi po nila in-implement yun, hindi nila na-establish. More so, yung National Land Use Act, sabi nga ni Senator Orly Mercado, ex-Senator Orly Mercado, nung unang dating niya sa Senate, yun ang na-file niyang batas. Hanggang ngayon, it's languishing in the halls of Congress and Senate. Ngayon lang kongresong ito hindi nakapasa sa third reading. All the rest nakakapasa sa third reading. Na-stall siya pagdating sa Senate. Bakit na-stall sa Senate dito sa ating ngayon? Alam na ninyo kung sino ang chairman ng agriculture sa Senate. Okay? So yun po mga ganong klaseng politika. Kaya tama po na sabihin natin, mawawalan na tayo ng pagkain, sobra na ang pag-convert ng ating lupa. Ang registered agricultural land po natin is 10 million hectares. Yung about 5 or 6 years back, ang census ng Bureau of Soils and Water Management, nung magsalita sa isang forum yung naging estudyante namin sa Institute of Crop Science, 7.6 million hectares na lang daw pala ang ating agricultural land ngayon. So hindi na po 10 million hectares. Why? Because of land use conversion. And because of that, it's also contribute to deforestation. Kasi saan pupunta yung mga magsasaka? Nandun na po sila sa upland. Supposed to be, nasa batas din, na 18% slope up, hindi yan dapat agriculture. Anong hindi agriculture? Kahit na 40% o 50% slope na nagiging agriculture na dahil sa sinasabi nilang agroforestry daw. Agroforestry, term lang po yan ng mga forester or deforester. It's actually agriculture. Okay? So which is a net user of water, which also promotes soil erosion. So yun po.
Okay, galing. Okay, next question.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Pom.
Democratic.
Marami po akong napulot na many insights, many data, many insights, and many proposals. Ano po? Ang tanong ko lang po, if we were to zero in on the 3 most important proposals that would make the biggest impact, ano po yung, kung ilalagay lang natin po sa 3, ano po yung pinaka-importante na masasabi ninyong the most impactful?
Opo. Number 1. Opo. Mahalin po at tulungan natin ang ating mga magsasaka. Huwag natin silang gawing beggars. Napakamura po ng bigas na pagbili sa atin. Ang sabi ko nga, CPI corrected price of price is 100 pesos and 108 pesos per kilogram base years 1972. Ilan lang siya ngayon? It's only what? It's only 35 to 50. Ang 50 po kasi yung malagkit na eh. Okay? Pero yung regular rice hanggang 40. Kaya nga ang rice natin is what? 35 to 40% only of its true price ngayon. Okay? And it's equivalent also to Watson calculation that the price of food has decreased by 50%. Bakit po nila pinayaan ginawa yon? Politika mo eh. Kasi maraming boto ang mga poor consumers. Paano daw yung mga mahihirap na hindi maka-afford ng pagkain? Yun po, napakadaya po eh. They're cheating us. They're misleading us. Ang rice daw ang nag-cause ng inflation. Nung magkaroon ng inflation nung, kailan ba yun? 2019 pa yun, bago i-pass yung RTL na naging justification ng RTL. Sabi ko, paano makaka-contribute ng 1% sa inflation ng rice? Ang rice gross value added is only 2%. So, hindi sila maalam mag-compute. Pag ang ginagawa nila po, ipinapalabas lang nila pag gusto nila. Kagaya nung mag-import tayo ng 2.8 million metric tons panahon ni GMA. Paano nila naipakita noon na kulang tayo sa bigas? Ginamit nila yung SUA, Supply Utilization Approach. Yun ang formula na ginagamit sa US ngayon sa pag-monitor ng military logistics or supplies. In-implement nila sa rice. Mali yun. So, yun po ang dapat nating tingnan. Bakit po hindi natin i-review yung mga policies, ang mga calculations na ginagawa nila? Kung tama ba? Ano, Prof. Doy? Okay?
Ano yung pangalawa? Mahalin ng farmers. Pangalawa.
Yung ikalawa nga, punta na tayo sa mga policies na hindi na i-implement. Yung mga legislation, napakaganda, hindi naman po i-implement. Okay?
Yung modernization
po, yung pong National Land Use Act, dapat nang may pasa ng Kongreso. So, yung 3 lang po na yon, na recommendation ko, yung support price sa magsasaka, para hindi sila maging pulubi, they will not be beggars. Okay? Para yung mga susunod na magsasaka, mamahalin nila yung bukid, hindi nila ipagbibili. Interrelated po yun eh, yung mga ganun. Kahit nasabihin ko lang 3, lahat ng 10 ni-recommend ko, recommendation ko for actions, kaugnay na rin yun eh. Okay? Kaya ako lang naman ng 10 para at least magkaroon ng detalye. Hindi sila ma-lump together.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Sir
Thank you.
Chris, si Ma'am Daisy po. Ma'am Daisy,
Daisy.
Ma'am
lagi
Daisy. Yes po, meron din siyang nilagay sa chat box. Go ahead, Ma'am Daisy. Naririnig po pero mahina po, Ma'am. Do you have a microphone?
I'm sorry kasi mahina ang internet signals namin.
Okay po. Basahin ko na lang po, Ma'am. Basahin ko. Sabi ni Ma'am Daisy, we are presently harvesting our ecologically farmed organic colored rice at 20,000 per H ultra low cost at Green Daisy Farm in Alicia, Isabela. Why don't we promote this soil regenerating and ultra low cost technologies? Tapos, ayun. I'm an organic rice farmer in Isabela.
Yeah, Ate Daisy, alam mo naman, magkasangga tayo dyan eh. Yun na nga, ang sinasabi mo, ang ATI, ang pinopromote ang chemical agriculture. Okay? Tama naman yung sinabi ko nga kanina, if all the farmers will adopt organic agriculture, tomorrow will go hungry kasi magre-reduce talaga yung yield. Kaya dapat merong steps na susundin, pagbabagong gagawin. Okay? It's a medium to long-term approach to food production, to greenhouse gas climate change mitigation na sinasabi natin kasi marireduce yung greenhouse gas emission kasi hindi nagagamit ng chemical fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, for 1 kilogram of nitrogen fertilizer manufactured to energy consuming process, what we call Haber-Bosch process. It will consume 2 liters diesel oil equivalent, and therefore it will emit about 13 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So, yun po. Meron namang batas tayo, I don't know, ito sa mga kaibigan nating abogado, ano ba ang pwede nating gawin pag yung batas hindi ini-implement? Okay? Like yung sa agriculture, yung Organic Agriculture Act, RA 168, hindi naman talaga pinapa-implement nila. Okay? Ang pinapa-implement, chemical agriculture. Yung nga lang sa akin kasi masaya na po ako as an agronomist na wag lang sunugin yung rice straw. O, ilan sa magsasaka ang hindi nagsusunog ng rice straw? Lahat halos nagsusunog. Ganun din sa sugarcane production, sa corn production, so on and so forth. So, yun po ang isang ano natin na naniniwala tayo sa batas, pero pag hindi na-implement yung batas, wala naman accountability. So, yung nagba-violate, pag hindi mo ini-implement yung batas, it's just like violating it. Tama ho ba? Okay? Pero walang naididimanda.
Okay, si Dr. Greg Del Pilar, may tanong.
Gusto ko lang ibalita na recently, siguro mga 2 weeks ago, nakipagpulong kami sa CPBRD, Congressional
Policy and Budgeting.
Budget Research Department ng lower house. Ang kanilang pinuno ay si Dr. Miral. At nakipagpulong kami sa kanila dahil matagal nang napag-uusapan mula 2018 pa lang yung tie-up between the CPBRD at saka ang NRCP, dahil gusto nga nila na parehong interesado yung CPBRD at saka NRCP na mag-collaborate nang sa ganon makabuo ng mga magagandang batas. Pagkatapos, ang sabi nila, ang kailangan daw nila, review ng mga batas. Marami daw ng mga batas na hindi sila coherent, na may mga contradictions at mayroong mga hindi na i-implement, I suppose. Yun ang tulad ng binanggit ni Dr. Mendoza. So iniisip ko, baka isa itong pamamaraan yung i-follow up natin sa CPBRD na baka sila mismo nakikita nila na ito nga mga problema ng mga batas na hindi na-i-implement, pwedeng baka ito isang pamamaraan ng pagtawag natin ng kanilang pansin dito sa problemang binanggit ni Dr. Mendoza.
Okay.
Opo. Sige po, kung makakatulong ako, tutulong tayo.
Dr. Mendoza, kayo po ba ay miyembro ng Division 6?
Agriculture po.
Ng Agriculture Division? Aktibo po ba kayo ron?
Retired na po kasi ako eh.
Kasi iniisip ko yung mga halimbawa kakausapin natin ng kakausapin natin ng CPBRD, yung pong mga input ninyo ay napakahalaga, no, para dun sa mga proyekto na pwede nating isulong sa NRCP.
Isa po akong naman na regular member ng NRCP. Although retired na ako sa academe, ibig sabihin, pag regular member ka, till you die.
Correct. Opo, hindi naman po kwan. Kaya siguro dapat po maging, ang kakausapin ko po yung chair, si Dr. Rene Vega. Para
si Dr. Rene, naging estudyante ko yun.
Oo.
Proteges na din.
Siguro kailangan maging mas active pa.
Maganda yung
kailan ba yung nagbigay din ako ng seminar sa isang convention ng NRCP? I think about 10 years ago. When I was invited to give a seminar.
Okay.
Okay, meron pa po bang mga tanong?
So sa mga estudyante mo, sir.
Yung una nagtanong, estudyante ko yun eh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sir Ted, yung yung pinag-uusapan lang natin dito about rice,
Nakafocus po tayo sa rice kasi yun ang natin, staple food, no? But if you want to, I can also discuss anong status sa other
kasi
crops.
po, naiisip ko lang po kasi sa probinsya namin yung Copra po kasi yung doon. And then, based po sa experience po namin talaga sa family, yun po may malaking koprahan yung mga mga uncle at auntie ko doon sa Leyte, sa Tacloban. Ang problema ngayon yun kasi you were saying kanina earlier na dapat mahalin ng mga farmers yung mga lupa nila, wag nilang ibenta, mga ganyan. Ang nagiging problema po namin doon, yung mga anak po kasi hindi na nila gustong mag-farming. So talagang ibinibenta na nila. And ngayon, ang dami nilang ilang hektarya yung gusto nilang ibenta. So kami dito sa Manila, nag-aano din kami na parang sayang naman yun. Parang yung bebentahan naman nila, hindi rin for farming na nila gustong gamitin yung land. So,
kasi mahal na.
Oo. So yung paano pa kasi yon? Dahil nga din pa sa pacing nung natin, nag-evolve din yung ating bansa. No, although dapat talaga nakafocus tayo dun sa agriculture kasi yun talaga yung dapat sa Pilipinas. Pero yung mga bata, iba yung mindset nila. So, kaya walang succession plan.
Kulang na po tayo sa oras, ganito lang. Kaya quickly, emphasize ko na kanina, dapat may pasa na yung National Land Use Act. Kung meron tayong ganun, edi magiging illegal kung magkakaroon ng land use conversion. Kung na-identify yan na primary area for agricultural production for whatever crop, etc. So, yung tungkol naman sa mga anak ng mga magsasaka na ayaw ng magsaka, katulad ko po, ako ay anak ng magsasaka. Ang naging problema ko lang naman noon, paano ako babalik sa pagsasaka samantalang hindi naman pag-aari ng aking mga magulang ang aming bukid na nililis lang na 5 hectares, 7 kaming magkakasama mga anak. So ang naging option ko nga talagang mag-aral akong mabuti at pinalad naman ako, nakapag-aral at nakapag-PhD, so on and so forth. So on the other end, nabanggit ko kanina, hindi para sa akin problema yung maraming magsasaka. Sobra ho tayo sa magsasaka sa Pilipinas, kaya yung farm sizes natin napakaliit. Tinatanong ako kung ako'y magsasaka, ano dapat farm size ang unang ko? At least mga 5 hectares irrigated lands kung rice land. Bakit? At least makakabili ka na ng makina. Meron ka ng starting place para to expand your operation. Ang average farm size ng mga regular farmers ngayon sa Thailand is already 30 hectares.
Wow.
At least ito na sila ng gamit.
Wow.
Meron ng makinarya, meron ng double cab na ganyan. Pag-uwi nila, nakasakay na yung mga produktong ipagbibili, dadaan sa supermarket o sa market. Pagpunta sa bukid, nakasakay na yung kanilang small hand tractor, so on and so forth. So, yung pagbabago ho ng rearrangement ng ownership to me is incidental, pero ang kailangan i-preserve natin yung land use. Okay? Sana ho sa urban planning, regional or whatever, household-based planning, para sa akin, hindi yung, on the other hand, ang kulang na naituturo sa agriculture ngayon, ano pong kailangan ng crops? Sunlight, water, yung carbon dioxide marami. Okay? So, pag nagtayo ka ng bahay, in-increase mo yung land area. Minimum of 4 times. Paano mo ngayon ang gagamitin yung sunlit areas for crop production? Kaya nga po ngayon, may rooftop farming na akong dinidevelop. Hindi ko lang nailagay dito yung ang dami kong harvest na patola kanina. Kung malapit lang kayo,
practicing agriculturist.
Okay. So yung mga ganun po, yung food kasi, kaya yung isang article ko nga, ni-title nung editor ng Inquirer na Time to Grow Your Own Food. Yun ang naging title ng article ko eh.
Okay.
Pero actually, hindi yun ang title.
Okay. Ngayon, medyo bitin tayo. Alam ko marami pa pong magtatanong. Kaya nga, ang gagawin ko ngayon, iimbitahin ko kayo sa March 28 si Dr. Ted Mendoza, kasama po si Kiko Pangilinan at saka si ano pangalan nito? Isa pa pong ekonomista, ang ating speakers, March 28. Food security din po ang pag-uusapan natin at siyempre mas malawak na diskusyon. So tama-tama po na si Men Santa Ana, tama. So medyo bitin tayo ngayon, kaya nga po sundan natin ito sa March 28. Ipopost po namin sa Facebook ulit at iimbitahin namin kayo dito sa session na to. So actually we have time for just one last question para lang naman po ma-close na natin ito at ma-round off natin yung discussion. Meron pa po bang tanong, lalo na sa mga estudyante natin na kailangan na umalis? Yung unang nagtanong kanina, si Ferds, estudyante ko po yun. So, meron pa po ba sa ating mga younger people?
I have a question po.
Oh, sige, please.
Do you have any resources you'd recommend us for further reading or research?
First, what area, what specific subject matter you want? Hindi naman po sa pagano, sabi ko nga, I have more than sa Google kasi 105 yung papers doon eh. So, yeah. Kung sa sugarcane, yung last na na-publish ko na libro which is titled Green Sugarcane Accounting. So, yon. Ano bang gusto mong focus? Ano bang begin with?
Siguro ang gawin nila, i-google nila Teodoro C.Mendoza. Tama ba? At makikita na po ninyo lahat dyan.
Hindi naman lahat, yung mga recent at saka yung
recent. Hanapin din nyo dyan sa Google Scholar at dun sa ibang... alam ng mga estudyante yan.
Opo.
Okay. So ang sinasabi ni Dr. Mendoza, hindi lang po rice yan. May kasamang sugar yan. At different...
fruit trees.
Fruit trees. Okay. O sige, yun na lang po. Maraming salamat. At palakpakan po natin si Dr. Ted Mendoza. Ang dami niyang naibahagi sa atin. Mukhang nabuksan yung isip ko, lalo na sinabi niyang, we have too many farmers. Mukhang bago sa akin yun. Ang idea pala noon ay kailangan, meron nga naman talagang ideal size para makapagsaka ka at you're going to be productive. Hindi yung isang kahig, isang tukaka nga na farmer. So I think these are very good paradigms to share. So, palakpakan po natin si Dr. Ted Mendoza. Salamat po. hanggang sa March 28. O, dito na po natatapos ang ating webinar at i-share po namin ito sa YouTube dahil ni-record po namin to. Maraming salamat po. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sige.
Bye po. Bye, Sir Greg. Ma'am Luli. Bye po. Sir Doy, bye.
Bye.
Dada.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you,